Hello.
Hey Amanda, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
My God, it's been forever.
I know.
How
I
you
mean, I see
been?
you on the internet, but
Me on the internet?
yeah,
Am I
all the
doing
baby.
good?
Mhm.
All the baby pictures, yeah.
I'm doing really
Okay.
good. Business is good. How are you? How are things rolling?
Things are rolling pretty good. No complaints.
Yeah.
Getting the word out there of what I do and who I help, and I'm talking to a ton of people every day,
Yeah.
every week, recording
I,
4 podcasts a week.
that's a lot.
I like to batch
Are
produce, so then I'm good for
did I
a few months.
connect you to Rich Cardona ever?
Yeah, I know Rich Cardona.
Oh yeah, you know him.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know why I was thinking about that. Because of building like podcast studios for his clients.
Yeah, I need to reach out to him. That's something that I'd started because I interviewed about 18 podcast agencies,
Okay.
and I interviewed basically to find out what problems they face and what kind of things, because I'm actually building a software around it.
Okay.
And so I just need to go back and reach out to them like, hey, do you want to partner up
Right.
with Home Studio Mastery and see what we can do?
Okay. All right. Just making sure you have everything you need.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So
You know,
what?
Mike
Mm-hmm.
DeCocho, right?
Michael, who?
Mike DeCocho.
Mm-mm. Who's that?
Oh, haha. See, there is somebody I can introduce you
Of
to.
course.
He runs a podcast agency as well.
Nice.
Okay. All right. Let's get into it. What are we doing today?
That's what I want to know. Because last time we talked, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about your journey. We talked about, how you got started. You wrote a book. So now this is kind of like a second appearance on the podcast. So we want to continue the conversation and go deep into what you're working on and how you're helping other entrepreneurs.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do it.
Awesome. Welcome back to another episode here on Hacks and Hobbies. And today we get to speak with our past guest, and Amanda. I don't even know how to say anymore. Amanda is here again. She's was a guest here on the podcast a couple years ago, and she's done some amazing things over the years. Amanda, thanks so much for taking the time and coming back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Janae. I appreciate not only being able to come on here once before, but a second time. I feel very special.
Well, absolutely. You're someone that I admire, and you've been doing some amazing things. So having that friendship and continuing that relationship, it's super super important, and
Yeah.
that's what human beings are. We're social animals who love to build that relationship over time, and it's just amazing to see where you've come till now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I 100% agree. And I think it's really cool. I've never met you in person, right? But you're someone I consider a close friend and an incredible businessman, and would happily send referrals and people your way just because of the man you are, and the father that you are, and the businessman, and how you operate in such an integrity. And I love doing business with people like that because, as you mentioned, we're social animals, and I'm a firm believer that business is very, very personal and should
Mhm.
be personal. That's the best kind of business possible. So, yeah, I love nurturing the network and nurturing businesses and people I believe in. So,
Absolutely, man. I love that. So, Amanda, talk to us. You're an author, you've been creating social content, you've been helping others, but then you've kind of pivoted from that journey of working for yourself to then now working for a much larger organization where you have a lot more support, a lot more um, structure. So you say, I don't know if that's the right word, but tell us, what's been keeping you busy? What's exciting about this new path that you've taken?
Yeah. It was kind of interesting because I got a lot of backlash from switching from being an entrepreneur to or an entrepreneur to an intrapreneur.
Mm-hmm.
People kind of felt like I had given up becoming an entrepreneur in order to go quote unquote work for somebody else, which
Yeah.
I find wildly ironic because the majority of people who start their own business actually just build a job, another
Mm-hmm.
job for themselves and don't
Yeah.
actually build a real business. So it's just kind of interesting that there was that stigma of like, oh, she gave up and
Mm-hmm.
which is the farthest thing from the truth. Inquiry Co is still operating, still writing. We're just very focused on writing books for
Mm-hmm.
influencers and high impact coaches. So that's still operational, that's still running. But yeah, I transitioned in a big way when I ran into Ron Early, who is the CEO and top dog of Automation Empire and wholesale automation. And we just hit it off. And when I started talking to him, I realized that he had built an organization, a company culture that I was trying to build, and he was about 5 years ahead of me of
Mm-hmm.
where I wanted to be. So it
Yeah.
was a very strategic move, which accelerated me into my goals and propelled me
Mm-hmm.
that was already built that I didn't have to struggle and build. I could plug
Yeah.
myself into. So um, it was a chess move, you know, while everyone else is playing checkers. I decided I wanted to play chess.
No, you're absolutely right because even Gary Vaynerchuk mentions, hey, go work for a company, go work in a company, even if it's
Mhm,
for free, just to understand the processes, to understand what it takes to make a really powerful company, what it takes to put a system together that works in your favor as opposed to not in
mhm,
your favor. And it is not like entrepreneurship is not a single person venture. You need people around you. You need
mhm,
you because you can, as a visionary, you can only bring one type of information. And yes, you can do everything, but then guess what? There's a learning curve to do all of those things. And that's why we bring in experts to handle the areas where we lack. And
mhm,
that's definitely a strategic move in joining a company and joining and working with somebody who's 5 years ahead of you and
mhm.
already paved the path. So now you can say, hey, this is really cool. How can I now accelerate my own progress to 10x that essentially?
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly what happened. I mean, not only is he the CEO, but he's also a mentor and friend and
Mm-hmm.
an expert in sales and communication. So I am able to also be part of his success in the companies that we run, but and also get coaching and mentorship in sales and in communication that again have just added to the value that I can bring
Mm-hmm.
to different areas. And it's really really incredible. And I know you mentioned systems. It's been a wild shift. I thought I was a fantastic leader, and I was a really good leader of leading people who were like me. Which is
Mm-hmm.
actually really easy to do. To lead people that are not like you at all is
Mm-hmm.
really difficult because you have to figure out what motivates them, how to
Yeah.
communicate in a different way, how to meet them where they're at. So that probably has been outside of learning new industries and new metrics and new data, learning how to lead people that were polar opposite of me or just
Mm-hmm.
different cultures, different languages, wildly different mentalities
Yeah.
was has been a really hard learning curve and a difficult process, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow in that way.
I love that so much. And that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur, right? You have the ability and the resilience
Mhm,
to take those learnings and say, hey, I'm building my own self. I think it was Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn who mentioned to get ahead in life, you want to invest in yourself
mhm.
more than investing in a job.
Yeah,
Yes, you can invest in a job and get ahead, but if you invest in yourself and level up your mindset, you're able to make fortunes. And I think that's what you're doing through this strategic move with joining Automation Empire.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And now I have the ability to learn about wholesale and licensing and manufacturing, negotiating with them, running a warehouse, creating SOPs, building systems and operations. And I think a lot of people and you've heard me talk about this before, we've talked about it before, people get into entrepreneurship and think it's going to be a super sexy lifestyle, or it sounds super romantic. It sounds like a great fun idea. Entrepreneurship is the hardest thing you could ever do. It's an emotional roller coaster. And there's a lot of unsexy things you have to do in order to get to the sexy stuff. So that's a lot of that systems and operations. That's a lot of that monotonous grind of every day to get that quote unquote overnight success, right? So I like bringing it back to reality and bringing the logic back of, okay, it's not the Instagram highlight reel that everyone thinks it is, but it does become that eventually. Like there are the private jets, there are the trips, there are the dinners, there are the things. You just got to put in the work and put in the time.
Right. So it's two things, right? You either put in the time, you put in the money, right? You put in the time and the work or the money, right? Either one of you will get you to that destination. And if you look at solid examples, let me give you an example. There's a nice S550 Mercedes class or the Maybach, right? These are nice looking cars. Yes, you want to drive it, but how much does it cost? You can either spend that money to go buy that luxurious entrepreneurship, or you spend the time. So it's two pathways to it. And even with for example, to have that kind of lifestyle, you got to put in the big money. You can either buy a company that's already doing good, and now you're that entrepreneur that's running this operation, and then you can kind of enjoy the loins of the company, right? So it comes down to what do you have? You have money or you have time? Well, most of us have a lot of time, so you got to put in the work to get to that point.
Right. And I think it's trading back and forth off of leveraging them. So you develop a skill set, they'll earn you money. Okay. And then you use that money to buy back time. And then with that time bought back, you learn more things so that you can leverage that to make more money. It's a constant pull and a switch between the two until you can just constantly level up and level up and level up to where you are buying companies to buy back time so that you can enter into circles that millions to be in the room with, so it's a constant flow, and I love that. I love the way you kind of presented that. And that's the name of the game, is time and money.
Time and money. So Amanda, tell us what it takes somebody who's, let's see, so what should I focus this conversation? So let me give you a little backdrop on what I've been doing for the past couple of months. I've been teaching high school students entrepreneurship.
I love that.
Right. So I'm teaching them what it takes to come up with an idea, then do some research, do some surveys, figure out who's the target audience. Basically all the stuff that entrepreneurs have to go through to figure out where their perfect fit is. What's their value props, all of those things. So the latest thing that they're working on is working on their business plan.
Okay.
Right. So I want to take I want to give them advice because they're also listening to the podcast.
Cool.
So I want you to share with them like what it takes and like how easy it is, but how also hard it can be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So building a business versus building yourself another job. The first way to start that transition, because when you start your business, it's going to be a job because you are doing everything. So it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, leveraging your skill set in order to get you money so that you can buy back time. So the first hire you can make, it's going to be really strategic and really important. And you can only make that first hire if you've been creating SOPs. and tracking your skills. And if you're able to teach someone how to be like you or how to take over some tasks that
Mm-hmm.
you no longer want to do. And that's going to be your first step forward into building a business versus just creating another job for yourself. And that could be an assistant type position. In my case, it was finding additional writers and creators for the copywriting agency. Here at Automation Empire, it looks like us building out teams of people. So the more people you can add to your business will give you more freedom, which will
Mm-hmm.
give you an opportunity to create more money. Um, so I think that that's probably the first most important step is you start your business, you're doing all the things, and then you figure out what you can outsource. And before you outsource it, you have to create those SOPs, you have to create those systems, you have to
Yeah.
create those order of operations so that when a person comes in, they have a task list, they can replicate what you do. And if you're like, nobody can do what I do, I've got the special sauce, then you will never be rich.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly,
That's so
if
true.
you're the only one that can do what you do, then you're screwed. You will
Mm-hmm.
never have a business. You will be a freelancer for the rest of your life. And that's fine. Some people like
Yeah.
that and do that. But if you actually desire to build an empire, a franchise, a company, then you're going to have to replicate at least parts of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the most important thing I could ever stress
Yeah.
is doing those SOPs and replicating yourself as much as possible.
Now, for those who haven't heard of what an SOP stands for,
It's a system operating procedure, right? What is it called? It's an order of operations. It's
it's
literally
about yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's a task list of, okay, how to start a podcast, open your laptop, download Zoom, book a guest, plug in the mic, turn it on, hit
yeah,
record. It's the step-by-step operating procedures to
yeah.
complete whatever task you're doing. So we have hundreds of thousands of
Mm-hmm.
SOPs for every single job title within the
Yeah,
company.
yeah.
So that, if in that's a seatbelt for your business so that you can not only multiply people, but you can fire people and bring new people in so
Mm-hmm.
that you can measure how effective
Yeah.
your people are, how effective your procedures are. Because if I'm doing 20 tasks every day that actually don't move the needle forward,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wasting a lot of time and money. And I
Yeah.
know if I have that written down, I know what to eliminate in order to become more efficient. So it's not just about hiring people, it's also about becoming more efficient as a whole and as a company, which
Yeah.
time is money. Again, there's that time and money thing. The more
Mm-hmm.
efficient you are, the more money you're going to save.
Absolutely. So SOP is a standard operating procedure, right? A set of written
Yep.
instructions, like you said, it's a task list describing the step-by-step process that must be taken to properly perform a routine activity. And if you think
Mhm.
about it, routine, right? There's that routine thing again. We all have a set routine, our internal SOP. Wake up in the morning, go wash your face, brush your teeth, blah blah blah. That's kind of
Mhm.
like an SOP that literally everybody copies and does. We teach this to our kids. Hey, did you wash your face? Did you brush your teeth? Did you
Yeah.
put on clean clothes and whatnot? Right. So those are SOPs that we follow by. So now, as a business is operating, a business is also a living thing. You want to have those
Mhm.
SOPs in place so that you can plug in new people, you can plug in new gears, you can plug in new things, and they are performing the same job faster and
Yeah.
faster over time.
And honestly, I think that is the hardest part of
Hmm.
running the business. The most simple part is the most hardest part
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
simple.
Yes.
And because
It's
we're
so simple.
like, I remember, like when you're sick and
Hmm.
you have to, um, I don't know, you need to drink water, but
Yeah.
you don't want to drink water because your throat is sore.
Mm.
And so you're tired of doing it.
Yep.
Same in business, creating those SOPs, creating those systems, documenting your steps. It's like drinking water with a sore throat after a while. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, God, this is such a waste of time. Do I really
Yeah.
have to do this? Can I
Yeah.
can I go on a podcast instead? Can I,
Mhm.
post on social media instead?
Yes.
Um, yeah, you could, but guess what? You're going to be screwed in the back end for not doing what you
Yeah.
do, just as the same as if you don't hydrate when you're sick, even though it
Mhm.
sucks, you still need to do it.
Yes, you got to
Um,
come back to those systems. You got to come back to having to do it again. Like,
mhm.
yes, you can go post but you got to come back and deal with the looming problem,
Yeah.
circling over your head.
And if you struggle with that, like I struggle with that. I'm much more of a visionary. I'm much more of a creator. My
Mhm.
first hire was a project manager. She would sit down and she would force me to follow those SOPs. And she would force me because I would, get an idea in the middle of the night and want to launch a course and write it all out in the middle of the night and would wake
Yeah.
up the next morning and be like, Nicole, I'm going to launch this course this morning. And she's like, no, you're not, because that's not how we do things. And it won't be as successful if we do not
Mhm.
follow this, SOP, if we do not follow the systems, if we do not follow, the task list. It's not, there's going to be loopholes, things are going to crash and burn. And
Yeah.
we can do that. We just have to follow the structure. So
Follow the
having
structure.
someone to hold me accountable to those things, that was my first hire. And then after that came creators. But she helped double my business just
Mhm.
because she was present and keeping me on task.
Yeah. Dude, I love that idea. I love that so much because it's almost like when I think it was like Iron Man 2 and Tony Stark wants to do all these things, but then Pepper Potts comes like, but we gotta do this, you gotta do this, and he's like, you
Mhm.
know what? You're the CEO, you run everything, and
Yep.
I'll be doing it's like what I can't be a CEO. Like, no, I so she assigns her because she was already doing all the operations. She's
Yep.
already making sure that Tony's in certain places, he's managing things because you need that person also.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
some of the things that I've mentioned, I basically had the students create two lists: a list of entrepreneurs and a list of CEOs of big companies. They couldn't come up with the names for the CEOs of big companies
Yep.
because they're not visionaries. I mean, they are visionaries, but they're not as illuminated as like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Steve
Exactly.
Jobs and stuff like that. So when you look at this list of Sundar Pichai from Google and Satya Nadella from Microsoft, they are
Yep.
pivotal and they climbed the ladder because they
Mhm.
knew systems. They were able to execute and climb, and they're both very viable paths.
Yes. Yeah, it's just about, do you need to be the face of the company, or are
Hmm.
you a really good operational person?
Yeah.
And honestly, that's what it came down to with Inquiry Co. is I was a really good face of the business. I could
Hmm.
sell, I could do podcast interviews, I can speak, I can come up with the ideas. I
Yeah.
sauce and sprinkle that on stuff. But as far as the CEO, the making the train actually run, Nicole was that person. And so when I
Yeah.
came into automation empire and wholesale automation, that was very clear that I was
Mm-hmm.
not meant to be the face of things, but to make sure this engine stayed running and keep
Mm-hmm.
everyone on task and keep everyone healthy and happy and operating. They call my office home base. And at the
Nice.
end of the day, the majority of the guys end up being in here and us kind of just decompressing and recapping the day and figuring
Mm.
out what needs to happen tomorrow. And I think that understanding that that is a powerful and very valuable position, even if it's not as visible,
Yeah.
is very important. And it's a great position for introverts. I'm definitely more of an introvert. Um, I'm a learned extrovert, and so it's a great position for me to operate in.
That's an interesting thing to say because I think I was an introvert and I've
Mhm.
become an extrovert over time.
Yeah.
But again, it's a switch that I can turn on and off. Like I love working alone. I love building things and creating things. But then when it times come, like going in front of 20 students and
Mhm.
speaking,
Yeah.
that's tough, right?
Yeah.
And these are high schoolers. Like they're
They're
talking amongst
brutal.
each other, or it's kind of crazy. So I'm just holding my comment, and having four kids kind of trained me to how to speak with kids, but these are teenagers. These are much older teenagers, so it's kind of new
Yeah.
experience that I'm putting myself through, so I can be a better speaker when it comes
Right.
time for me to come and speak on stage.
You are brave. I remember I had to go into a juvenile detention center
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
teach kids in juvie some stuff. And woo, I would rather speak in front of 30,000 people in an
Hmm.
auditorium than go into that classroom with
Yeah.
those 15 boys because they were brutal, man. But it definitely, if you ever want to learn how to public speak,
Yeah.
do it in front of kids because they will let you know how good or how terrible you are, and they
Yeah.
will troll you and they will grill you, man.
Yep, yep. It's been a pretty fun journey. I mean, it's been what, 2 months already, and
Wow.
I can't believe where the time went. 2 days a week, and I adore, and I can see where everybody's mindset is also, because as they grow and as homework that they get done and assignments that they're assigned, I can
Mhm.
see, okay, who's going to be in which position in the future,
Right.
like in companies and running companies.
That's
It's
pretty
really
cool.
it's really cool to see that growth. When
Yeah.
you mentioned about going on stage at this juvenile facility, it reminded me of, I think, 20 years ago, we had visited this correctional facility, and they told me to go up there and like recite the Quran. So I'm dressed in this garb, and I'm like going up there, and I'm talking, and I'm just speaking, and there's like probably 50 or 100 people, in this stage, and I'm like just reciting the Quran. I'm looking over, I'm like, I don't know what to say. So I'm just gonna recite and then read the translation and just walk off.
Hmm.
Because most people, when you go up there, you're engaging the audience, you're
Right.
talking, and it's almost like I had totally forgotten about that experience till you mentioned this. So
Sorry
pretty
to bring
interesting.
back such a terrifying experience. I did not mean to traumatize you.
No, no, it was a good experience. And it's almost like a stepping stone into where you want to be, because something that we did in the past almost like become a become a foundation on where you're going to go next, or
Oh,
where you
thousand
want to
percent.
go, right?
That's why the other day I was talking to another business owner and he was like, well, doing social work and then copywriting and now running two multi-million dollar organizations, like
Mm-hmm.
those are really wildly different. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, they're not at
They're
all,
not.
because the constant underlying theme is communications and sales and
Mm,
negotiation, and communication is the root of all that, is the most valuable skill
yeah.
that you can invest in, the most valuable skill, and it can be used and will elevate you in literally any career path you take, and it'll make you so much money if
Yes.
you understand how to communicate and how to communicate differently, the psychology behind it, how to listen, and how to get people to do what you want, essentially.
And there's the golden nugget right there: how to communicate and get people to do what you want, right?
Mhm.
I think there's several books written on that as well.
Oh, yeah. No, I
But
mean, my favorite is probably Closer by Ron
mm,
Early, because he breaks it down in such a practical and applicable way.
mm-hmm,
Uh, and they're very, very deep subjects that he's tapping into. He's tapping into, neurolinguistics.
yeah,
He's tapping into tonality, all these different things, but he's breaking it down in a very simplistic way that people can read a chapter and literally apply it to their communication and accelerate where they're at almost immediately. So that would be my go-to and favorite book about it.
right. Nice. That's really cool. Well, I'll definitely look up Closer by Ron Early. The most effective sales strategies to date, the importance of communication, overall mitigating the risk of losing. Ooh, I like that. This is cool.
Mhm.
All right. So we've talked about entrepreneurship. We've talked about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, building systems, having the tenacity to learning new things and continually growing your mindset. Because I think the first thing that we talked about was the entrepreneurial mindset. Growth
Mhm.
mindset versus fixed mindset. You can't really do a whole lot with that fixed mindset. If you have
Right.
that growth mindset, you can move mountains, essentially.
Yeah.
So as we move forward, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to uh, in your entrepreneurial journey, in your here supporting the companies that you're working with? Like, do you look? Where do you look for? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Um, I see myself as a billionaire, and I see myself operating, at least 3 more companies
Mm,
underneath the ones we currently have. So I own equity in all of these companies. I'm full owner of Ingreco,
mm-hmm,
but I own equity also in Automation Empire and Wholesale, and we have about 3 other 3 other
mm-hmm.
businesses that we're already starting to develop and consider launching.
Yeah.
Uh, so at least 3 more companies, um, a couple of Amazon stores for sure. And the
Mm-hmm.
whole goal of this is to build a legacy and to leave an
Yeah.
impact. But the truth of sustainable impact and legacy is it has to be funded. You have to have
You've
money
you've
in
got to
order
have money.
to create real sustainable change. And so the goal is to get super wealthy, which will happen, which is happening, in order to inject funding into places that are needed. So whether that's
Mm,
into young entrepreneurs like the ones you're teaching, and give them the capital startup that they need to start up their companies,
yeah.
so that we can build and grow different people and build and grow different ideas and skill sets.
Yeah.
Investing in legislation, influencing the economy of my hometown, helping
Mm,
others, donating. This is what it's all about. I
yeah.
don't know. Very few entrepreneurs actually get into it for the money, because God,
No.
it's the most risky investment. It's insanely risky. Most businesses fail within the first couple of years, and you're
Yeah.
left with nothing.
Yeah.
Um, but most of us are driven by philanthropic endeavors, and so I've found that to be true with the majority of the people that I work with. And so, in
Mm-hmm.
order to keep amplifying and multiplying good in the world in the most
Yeah.
simplest terms, that's the end goal. So it's
Yeah.
in 5 years I will be doing that on a $1 billion level,
Love
easily.
that.
So
Love
yeah.
that. The one thing that you mentioned, it's not about the money. It's about something greater than ourselves. It's
Hmm.
something, and that's why in the executive summary or the business plan, you got to have the mission and the vision. Without
Mm.
those two things, it does not make sense to do anything at all.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I want to sell lots of clothes so I can make money. It's a good idea, but what's the bigger vision? Like look at Tom's
Yeah.
shoes. They wanted to make sure that everybody has shoes. So every pair that you buy, they send a
Hmm.
pair of shoes to a needing uh, country or city or school so that
Hmm.
kids have shoes to put on.
Hmm.
And uh, that's a bigger mission than anything that you can imagine.
Well, and why it works as a business model is because you're tapping into dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, which,
Mm,
if you're trying to do low ticket, cheap sales, then you can leverage negative emotions like fear, FOMO, scarcity mindset. You can leverage those things. But if you're
yeah.
wanting to sell high ticket items and actually create sustainable success, you need to release positive emotions. So when
Mm,
people buy Toms, yes, they get a pair of interesting looking shoes, but they also get a hit of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin because they're doing something good and they're part of something bigger. So
yeah.
not only is it impactful in the community, it is a very good sales tactic. It's a
Yeah.
very good business model. It just
Yeah.
makes sense on all levels. Doing good makes sense on all levels. Creating
Yeah.
positivity makes sense on all levels. It's good mentally, spiritually, financially, business wise, literally everything. You can't lose.
There's no way to lose. I love that so much. Amanda, what little tidbits or would you have? Or actually, let's take a quick break and then we come back. You can share 3 hacks based on your journey, based on what you're doing to our listeners so that they can immediately take action on these and be in a better space than they were yesterday.
Okay, let's do it.
Hey guys, welcome back. We've been talking with Amanda here, my really good friend. She's really amazing, and you've heard the episode. I mean, what am I saying? Uh, Amanda, you've got 3 hacks to share for the audience.
Yeah, number one would be creating routines. And I know everyone's probably rolling their eyes at this because they've heard this, but creating meaningful routines and routines that you don't get off of Instagram, but routines that actually work for you.
Mm,
So I work better with slow mornings. And when I say slow mornings, it means basically no work in the morning. In
mhm,
the mornings, I go to the gym, I make breakfast, I walk my dog, I take care of my hedgehog. Like
mhm,
I do a lot of stuff, but it's no work, and that gives me the time to get my creative juices flowing so
yeah.
that I can dive straight into work as soon as I get to the office. So find a routine, have a morning routine that
Mm,
works for you. That's not just trendy.
yeah.
Um, my second hack comes again with time, and it's time blocking. So making sure that you
Yes.
are blocking things on your calendar. Google Calendar is super easy to do this. Color code things so you can see how much time you're spending towards meetings versus money generating activities versus networking. And in a quick glance, you can see if you do this in a similar fashion, you could just Google ways to do this. You can
Mm,
kind of estimate what percentage of your time is going where, and is that working for you? This is especially helpful for people like me who struggle to stay on task. So I'll block
mhm,
a time out, I'll do it, and then I'll give myself a task that I love after I do my quote unquote working tasks. And it's almost like a reward for me. So that's how I build out a time blocking and a reward system in and of itself. And then my third hack would be to decompress after your day and recap your day with yourself. And before you go home to your significant other, before you go home to your dog, so you don't take out any of this on them. Because again, entrepreneurship is difficult. Running multi-million dollar companies are difficult and stressful. So making sure that you're taking that time to review what you got completed today, review what needs to happen tomorrow, and decompress from what's happened throughout the day so that you can go home and be fully present with the rest of your life.
man, I love that so much. Slow morning, build a routine, block your time, and decompress. That's so powerful because a lot of times we forget to decompress. There's a transition period, switching mode from work mode to now family mode. And I've
Mhm.
kind of trained myself to do that at 5 o'clock. I'm out of the office. And I've
Yeah.
actually said this so many times that literally I cannot get any work done after 5 o'clock. If I even try to force myself, it's kind of a no brainer because my kids will come in like, oh, let me type on the keyboard, let me record an episode with you, so what I do now is like, okay, let me set a time for them so that they can come and they have a daddy daddy kid time where they can
Sure.
do some kind of activity, which is all also in line with what I want to do in the future, right? So it's kind of like you got to
Mhm.
bring you got to bring that transition in such a way that it works for you, and it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. For me, it's a very logical. I don't have kids. So for me, it's a very
You have two.
logical.
You have a dog and a
Oh,
hedgehog.
I have the hedgehog in the and a husband. So learning to mine's a little bit more logical and
Mhm.
systematical in the way because I'm transitioning from one set of tasks to a different one,
Yeah.
which is a different mindset and mind frame, which
Mhm.
you do, but you're involving other humans in that process. So it's a little
Mhm.
bit more emotionally engaging than it is
Yeah.
task oriented.
Yes, you're right. You're right. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was, uh, shoot, escaping my mind. Blah blah blah. I can't think. I can't remember anymore.
Mm, three tasks. Um,
Hey, Bina, edit this out.
oh yeah.
She knows. Um, what's that? What's that called? Emotional. Right. So when you
Intelligent.
do the transition, it's almost like you're setting yourself up for success, right? When you
Yeah.
do the decompression. So when you do the decompression, you're setting up. When you do the decompression, you set yourself for success, and then you're more present and ever aware of your surroundings, and your significant other is
Mhm.
more connected with you. So that's super important because you want to have that. I don't want to call it a work-life balance. I want to call it a whole life system where you are fully who you
Yeah.
are. It's almost like you've taken out the glasses and you're no longer Superman, right? Or you are super.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I would like to touch on work-life balance because there is you have two different parties. You have people who are like, everything has to be super balanced and
Hmm.
you clock out at 5 and you turn off your phone and you don't look at it first thing in the morning. All
Yeah.
this stuff that people put down as lost. I look at my phone first thing in the morning.
Hmm.
I'm on my phone sometimes in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
That's what works for me. And then you've got another crew that works 24/7 and is like, no, you got to be all in. I think where people get caught up in is balance doesn't mean equal.
Hmm.
Balance
Hmm.
just means balance. And
Yeah.
if, just because an object is big or just because something takes up the majority of my time doesn't mean it weighs more or it equals more than something else.
Yeah.
Like, balance isn't about equality. Balance is about balance and about value.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
I
when we
love
talk
that.
about work-life balance, we're not talking about, very astringent or um, con intense confines or laws or rules. We're
Right.
talking about where you want to put your energy in such a way that it brings stability and peace to your life.
Amen. I love that. Thank you so much, Amanda. So the thing that I just remembered about was routines. It's not easy to set up routines. It's very hard, right? So that's what you said. Look up Google, see what's working for other people, and then make sure you put in the time to find what works for you. This
Mhm.
past summer, we asked our son, create a routine for yourself so that you follow. Guess what? The entire summer he did not create a routine because we said either create a routine or we'll create one for you. It's like I'm working on it. Well, the summer was over and there was no routine created. So sometimes set a you have to give a routine to yourself or give a routine to somebody that you're training. That's why those SOPs matter so much. So going back to full circle, importance of SOP, importance of systems in place, importance of have some kind of guidance for yourself so that you can accelerate and go much farther in your journey. Amanda,
Um,
this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time. I love talking to you all the time, and this was a treat for sure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, as usual.
All right, thank you, listeners, for tuning into this episode, and we'll catch you in the next episode.